COP26 has come and gone. Our leaders have made ambitious commitments, but judging from their previous attempts, they might not be able to live up to those commitments they've made to us, right? Because in order for those commitments to be realized, they need this unprecedented commitment to personal change. Meanwhile, we, the citizens of Earth, continue to deal with the fallout of nested crises presented to us in the form of a global pandemic. And not to mention the recent war in Ukraine, resulting in severe energy shortages and price hikes across the planet. This all in the backdrop of our ever-present climate change crisis. Can we afford to entrust our fate to a small group of under-resourced leaders? And if not, then what is that alternative?
We still need to go deeper to the root of the climate crisis and recognize it's fundamentally a civilizational crisis. And we need to change our development paradigm and the focus on economic growth. We need to revise what our priorities at our individual level, but also at a collective level, at the level of our societies. We are rather looking for solutions in which we are comfortable, such as changing technologies, developing financial incentives, etc. But it's very difficult collectively to look inward. What we are missing is this commitment to personal change. Inner transition within an individual typically involves a person gaining a deepening sense of peace and a willingness to help others, as well as protecting the climate and the planet. Inner transition can imply that individuals become sympathetic to concerns that include climate issues and values connected to nature.
We do take some positives away from this as a country, in that the South African NDC was actually consulted throughout the country. So we've got 9 provinces, and there was stakeholder engagements held in each of them to influence what the country was in actual fact going to table. It's not what we expected, but it was better than what we would have tabled initially. From a developing country context, issues around finance, technology, and support are still not clarified. It's very difficult for developing countries to actually plan if these are not finalized. So the short answer was no. The pledges in terms of the national contributions is not going to get us where we need to be as required by science.
From the governance perspective, well, it's clear that we need to protect our societies from the influence of lobbies, and which are linked also to this dominant economic growth paradigm, which I think we need to really reconsider. We see that this system of adversarial competitive democracy, in which parties compete for political power, does not allow to create the public debate that are able to inform, the population and the decisions we take on such complex issues like climate change. We need to really review our democratic systems to foster more deliberate practices from deliberative direct democracy. We can harness also the power of technology through digital democracy. In France, these new practices, we experimented with a citizens' assembly for climate change, which was really a very interesting experience. We selected by chance a number of citizens, so there is no bias. They are not biased for or against ecology, etc. And we ask them, we give them the opportunity to discuss with experts and provide some solutions to the climate crisis. While these are, random people now, and they happen to come up with by far the most ambitious strategy we've had in France to address climate change. So that really proves that our representative democracy is really not working. Now, asking people and you come with a much better roadmap to address climate change. So I think that shows a way about how different kind of institutions, democratic institutions, different kinds of democratic practices can help better address the climate crisis.
The kind of strategy that the big businesses and governments are adopting is kick the can down the road. That's what Kevin calls it, where we're kind of dreaming of these fantastic technologies which are going to save us all, and they don't actually exist yet. And to scale to a planetary scale is like it's never been done before, with technology. If we take this approach, then it gives us an excuse not to actually do the things we need to do, to actually reduce our consumption and make all the hard decisions, like invest in regulation and controls and get off of fossil fuels immediately.
And I feel that, where we are is a place in history where as an organism, as a being, as a species, we're being challenged to move from one stage to another. And story is very interesting because it's really at the heart of how we perceive the world. It's bringing us to a new place of being. And if we don't step into that and adopt the kind of rapid whole system change that Gsell certainly advocates, and that is clearly necessary, and step away from an old way of being into a new one, then essentially we're not listening to the feedback that life's bringing us. We're all one, that we need to work together, we need to stop competing. It's to start really being human in the best sense of the word, and taking responsibility in every local place, in every person's life, and working together.
So interesting enough, most of you talk about this consciousness, talk about, being present in our evolution, really. At every different juncture within our evolution, there has been a new problem that's presented itself. So really, we're just at another point, inflection point, right, of making that decision to do what is necessary to evolve, right?
The question was, can we trust the leaders to deliver what they need to deliver? And the answer, I think, is probably not. Problems that we get hit with are not the ones we were expecting. And the ones that we get hit with are the ones that we didn't expect when we're focused on the ones that we think are really, really vital. Here's a question for everyone. Just think about this for a second. What happens if we fail? What are the consequences to you, me, our children, our grandchildren, the world? What are the consequences if we fail to get this under control? And how do you feel about it? And then the next question is, why do you care? Why do you care? Because when you start to feel that, when you really start to feel that in here, then it's surprising how quickly you can start to act, right? What I've seen is that human communities can change in a heartbeat. They can change their direction. They can change where they're aiming for. And if you get the story right, if you can hit people, if you can connect with people powerfully, it is amazing how they will change their paradigm. I'm not worried about the leaders. I'm worried about us.
How do you think we got ourselves in the midst of this polycrisis?
Well, I think we all are quite aware that somehow this has to do with our economic system and or I would say even our development paradigm, which is focusing on economic growth and our material conditions. We have grown our power, but we have not at the same time invested in the kind of inner development that we would need to be able to balance and use this power wisely. So, and this development model is itself historically comes from the West and a specific worldview, mindset, culture, and a certain set of values that we can, most important, we can identify. Materialism, individualism, reductionism, anthropocentrism, a new development paradigm, which I believe should focus on being instead of having. Then we need to invest to also change, or evolve our culture, evolve our civilizations towards what also Charles Einstein called the story of interbeing.
Perhaps we need to start rethinking, are we human beings or are we indeed human interbeings? Can you focus in on some very key factors that you suggest we pay attention to in order to put ourselves?
We should not be the only one that have the right to be, right? Other living beings have also the right to be. And that leads us to important questions, like when we decide to, I don't know, let's say build a dam on a river or something, do we really need that dam? Do we really need that hydropower that will come out of it? Or do we really need it for agriculture? What do we really need to be and to be well? So I think that's a fundamental question.
Can you focus in on some very key factors that you suggest we pay attention to in order to put ourselves on a different path?
We need to relook at how our societies are organized in all sectors. I think the real paradigmatic change is to recognize that, as you said, to me, in the politics of being, I mean, this is for all living beings, and the notion of human being is also limiting because it feels like we are somehow disconnected from the rest of living beings, and the earth itself is a living being. We should not be the only one that have the right to be, right? Other living beings have also the right to be. And that leads us to important questions, like when we decide to, I don't know, let's say build a dam on a river or something, do we really need that dam? Do we really need that hydropower that will come out of it? Or do we really need it for agriculture? What do we really need to be and to be well? So I think that's a fundamental question.
What are some of those key policy changes that you, as the Environmental Minister for the Western Cape region, are looking to propose in the way that you govern that is different from before?
He does not want to be labeled as a decision maker that didn't respond to the urgency, when he knew about it. Yeah. So that is key. So he drives it in all the platform that he is present. But it's easier said than done. Climate change in the Western Cape is not new. It's we've known about it since 2008, where we developed a strategy. But the main strategy that we tried to implement was back in 2014 that we pulled together. So hopefully we'll crack the consultation nut and get a lot more people, get a lot more buy-in, because because of the openness and the co-creation potential to get all our sectors then contributing. Because as I said, the vision that we've set ourselves, government alone is not going to achieve this. So we are dependent on the partnerships that we develop.
So tell us a bit more about how understanding perspective perhaps helps us negotiate our way through this a lot better.
I think within all of us is this desire to do something with our lives that's good for us and good for other people. And we're trying desperately to find some way of doing that. And the system, as Thomas said, often is not organized to allow us to do that. You can only manage what you can measure, right? But the problem is when you measure the wrong things, or you measure something because you think that's what you should measure. It's about bringing people together with multiple perspectives, multiple paradigms, and actually exploring and orientating where we are and what we've got and what we can do. And again, miracles happen.
What do you think, in your opinion, how can we practically actually realize this alternative?
For us, that really emphasized not only the powerlessness of citizens generally, but the action of this old political system that divides us against ourselves and makes us very powerless. So this idea or this narrative around us being powerless has to be challenged. If we're not challenging it, we are vulnerable to being manipulated even further all the time. If we want to not fall off the cliff, we need to find our agency and steer it away from the cliff somehow. Only 2% of people are members of political parties in this party political system. What is happening in the 98%? There's a phenomenon over the past 3 decades, because of the birth of the internet. There has been this phenomenon of individuals suddenly finding themselves, massively and radically connected to each other, to information, to possibility, to ideas, to competing narratives. And what do they do with this, new way of being, in the public space? And what we've seen is that increasingly people have started to try to work together, simply to reclaim this idea of their powerlessness. Community agency networks have been forming everywhere. So you would recognize them as transition towns, eco-villages, mutual aid networks, municipalities. They all take different forms, but we gave them this generic term, community agency networks. So once you start to give them this generic term, then you can see the possibility of them connecting to each other and having an impact, particularly from the perspective of soft power. This building of a coherent people's voice coming down to active community agency networks is a possibility for the shift of power. It's more how people move into relationship with each other, exactly like you're saying, what emerges from that relationship, what comes alive in that community, and then what decisions are made about the future.
What is the role that you think media plays in all of this?
For me, media is the leverage point that allows consciousness to shift. It's the bridge between those who have shifted their consciousness to those who are still in the process. I mean, essentially, we're in an emergent situation. This change is happening through us. It's an evolutionary thing that is going on. The mediating framework between consciousness and reality. The big problem is essentially we have had a media that has been a tool of propaganda, one way or another. We have got a media that tells stories to create a confused consumerist culture. Confuses us about the truth of reality. Our stories don't model the truth of reality. They try and help us escape from it. More than any industry, film and media is very open to disruption, to bottom-up disruption. All the conditions that shape those industries have shifted because of technology.
Why bottom-up and why rapid when it comes to system change?
I think that the citizens of the world, because there has been a lack of coordination, have not really been able to, we haven't been able to create the efficacy that we have the potential to create. I think there's a huge amount of efficacy that can happen, but it requires coordination. We need to construct a social superorganism. If I trust you, then I will share my best ideas with you. If I don't trust you, if there's any hesitation, I will hold back on that idea because I've been burned before. And it's only when we share our best ideas that magical things can happen. If there's a problem, you recognize it, you stop causing the harm. And you need a reset after that. You need to find an alternative that will meet your objective without causing the harm. You test it out, and if it works, you implement it, you scale, you go. So that's kind of the essence of Stop, Reset, Go. So it's kind of a simple principle, 3-step principle for change.
We are a money-chasing economy world at the moment, and we're drowning in wealth, and we're searching for money, our own invention, to distribute it. What the hell does that mean? College desks are empty more than they're full. restaurant tables, airline seats. You can't name anything that free enterprise doesn't know how to build, that dozens of competitors jump in until downward pressure on market share, prices, profits, and wages create massive excess capacity side by side with massive unmet need. Food's an abundant, renewable resource. People are hungry all over the world. They can't be customers for lack of money, but we invented money to match buyers and sellers. The other context is everything that produces wealth is only improving rapidly. Technology, infrastructure, human skill, knowledge, and creativity, our ability to use free and abundant renewable resources. So what should be the outcome of that is an ever higher quality of life across the globe, ever shorter working hours across the globe, and ever less damage to the environment across the globe, and none of that's happening. So what's the alternative? Imagine a giant global ledger akin to the internet. Now think about this. It accounts for the wealth, it accounts for the need, it makes the match. It accounts for the work to be done, it accounts for the skilled people everywhere that are unemployed or underemployed, and it makes the match. Skip the Great Resignation. It's a blip in ridiculous, economics. So now, what would it look like if it lived in the commons like the internet, if it was run by protocol and not by politics or management like the internet? It would literally do this measuring like I mentioned. And think about these features of the internet. Number one, it's run by protocol. Again, no politics, no battles over how to run it. Once you get on, there's mass customization, which again is a business term. And everything I'm discussing with my 1 minute left is a revolutionary business model that can arrive through minimum viable product and early adopters. Now think about this. You get on the internet by following the rules, but then you can do e-commerce, you can do charity, you can do porn, you can be for against abortion, for against guns, for against drugs. So it's a way to get along by doing your thing and not interfering with how others are doing their thing. It's as acrimonious at the moment as is all internet communication. But if it lives in the commons, if it's powered by protocol, if it focuses on wealth and not competition over money, we're in an entirely new world. And the whole system literally lives inside the loyalty reward industry. I'm going to give myself 10 extra seconds and say why. Loyalty rewards monetize excess business capacity, and they're not a circulating currency. They're a ledger. They're issued, redeemed, and taken off the books. The companies don't get them back to pay vendors and to pay employees. So we're talking about a system that is not something you can compete over. It's only inherently cooperative.
I firstly have to be different because I'm not going to go where I want to go with the same thinking that got me here, right? That's the first thing. But the second thing is that I need to find ways to help this community that I lead to also be in that same mindset, heart set, well set. If we really want to make change, we're going to have to become radical. We're going to have to invest into relationships. We're going to have to talk to one another. We're going to have to come from the different disciplines. It's not our credentials that matter. It is our ability to negotiate and navigate this whole scenario, to talk, to engage with one another, and our capacity to want to do that. Everybody's seeing the problem. It's just that we lack this ability to find ways to collaborate on a different level now. And that's what's required. That is the evolution right now. There's no us and them, it's us.